Author Laurell K. Hamilton creates dark worlds that are deeply imaginative yet strikingly familiar. She sets her books in recognizable places like St. Louis and Los Angeles, but with a twist. Her fictional world is populated by vampires, fallen angels, fairies, and zombies, in addition to humans. Hamilton is a prolific writer and just released her 30th book in the Anita Blake series. She also has 2 other series of books in a genre she calls paranormal thrillers.
I am doing what I wanted to do since I was 14, and I feel very lucky that I grew up to be able to do that, because most of us don't get to do that.
Hamilton talks about her latest book, Slay, about creating strong female protagonists, and about how her loyal fans influence her work. Laurell K. Hamilton, it's great to have you here today to talk about your newest book, Slay, and your other work. This is your 30th book. Yes. About Anita Blake in the Anita Blake series. When you started with Anita, did you know that character would have that kind of staying power for you?
Oh no, absolutely not. In fact, I had my very first novel, Night Seer, which is Elves, Dwarves, and Dragons, was supposed to be part of a series, and then like most first books, it didn't sell. So when the first Anita Blake novel, Guilty Pleasures, sold, they gave me a 3-book contract. And I remember when I signed it, I thought, there'll be at least 3 books. So I had no idea that I would be still writing and loving and the books selling well 30 books later. That was beyond my wildest dreams or goals.
Well, and for most writers, seeing 3 books is like, hooray.
Right? For the first several contracts, it would be 3 books. And each time I'd go, well, there'll be 6 books. There'll be 9 books. And I feel very blessed and very lucky. I mean, I've worked hard, but there are a lot of good writers out there, and not everybody gets this chance.
So what do you think the appeal is to readers over all these years of Anita Blake?
Well, I actually started asking fans that, because my husband says that really my audience is me. If I'm not having a good time, I figure the reader won't be having a good time. But I did start asking fans. I said, what is it? And so they said that Anita Blake helps them be brave, because she's brave in the face of terrible odds, literal monsters, and in times of trial. I literally have fans say they think, well, if she can be brave, I can be brave. It helps them. And at this point, my characters are my imaginary friends, and they are the friends of my fans as well. Everybody writes the strong female protagonist now. But when I started out, it was not common at all, and I actually had people suspect that I was a man writing a female character because she was tough and there was violence. And as a woman, they didn't think I should be writing violence. I wanted to create a character that could keep up with the hard-boiled detective men and hold her own. But I also have always loved folklore and monsters and horror. So I combined it all in one book, one series, and so I give myself enough toys to play with so I would still be interested. And it is what has appealed to the fans. They come for the relationships, they come for the monsters, they come for the mystery, and the bad guy gets caught, and the good guys win. And I think that's one of the appeals of mystery as a series, is a genre. It is very ordered. I did have one book where the bad guy got away at the end, though. I believe that was Incubus Dreams, because I'd had so many police officers that are fans write in and say, you can't solve a crime like this. It's too neat. And so I literally had the bad guy get away, and a few books later, we find him and end his serial killer spree, because the police had said, so many fans had said, that's not how it works. I listen to my fans. Mm-hmm. They are very generous with how much they love the series, but also I have had real police officers, real military, real first responders. They've answered my questions over the years, and the books would be a lot less rich and realistic if I hadn't had their help for Anita and all the characters.
When you read your books, it feels like imagination, but what I'm hearing you say is there's a lot of research that goes into it.
Oh, I do a lot of research. My editor says I do more research for my fiction than most people do for their nonfiction.
Really?
That actually kind of scared me, to be honest. I was like, But I'm a biologist. I mean, I have a degree. I'm a non-working biologist because I've never earned my living at it. Most of us don't. And I think the science background makes me really lean on the research because for my were animals, I start with real animals and I try to add that in for their culture. The more fantastic you ask people to believe, the better your research better be.
How do you hear from your fans?
When I started out, 30 years ago, it was they had to write into my publisher or write into my agent. Now I'm online. I'm the first one. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. So my fans have a pretty direct line now. Okay. Anytime I do a signing, they come. And it's always very special when they can talk to me in person and tell me how the books have impacted them. And sometimes they tell me that they've read my books and it's helped them get through horrendous things in their real life. If my work can help them through I will cry if I talk in detail about that. So then it's a blessing, and I just have to accept that it can. But I remember being intimidated the first time somebody told me that that my fictional world helped them get through real life tragedy.
I can imagine. But it's like you said, she was a character of such strength, a woman character of such strength, a protagonist, at a time when maybe there wasn't a lot of that, when you said early on in your career.
Well, and also I write male characters that are well-rounded, and I've had men say that it's really helped them. Mm-hmm. It's helped them understand parts of themselves that they didn't before. The character of Nathaniel Grayson starts in the series as a minor character before we meet him, but he will talk about it that he went through rehab. He was an addict. He went to rehab, and not only did he get clean and stay clean, but then he ends up being a major part of the major romantic arc in the series. And so he builds a life, and he gets a happy ever after. And I have had so many people tell me that they've gone to rehab. They've gotten clean because if Nathaniel can do it, they can do it. I did my research. I did my research on it, and apparently I did because people have been moved, and I have lost count of how many people said that they've gone to rehab because Nathaniel went. And I am going to tear up.
That's got to be really satisfying.
What an amazing thing to write it on paper and then have people in their real life feel strong enough to do that. Mm-hmm. And several people have said because he had his happy. It wasn't just that he got clean and went to therapy and healed, but that he actually got a happy life. And it gives them hope that they can have it too. That's magic. That's absolutely magic.
So in your process, how do you know like a character like that is going to become more front and center? Does that just happen when you sit down, or do you kind of have a plan in mind, or do you know when that character comes up, oh, this is going to be a major character? Because you've got so many characters and so many, well-populated novels,
No, I have no idea. Well, sometimes I think somebody's going to be a major character. Jean-Claude, obviously, Master Vampire, and Anita, I knew they were major. I thought Richard Zeman was going to be major. He's come and goes, working his own issues. But I didn't know Nathaniel was going to be major. I didn't know that the character of Jason Schuler was going to be major. I often get surprised by what characters suddenly have an extra spark. So no, taught me completely off guard.
Well, and isn't that part of the magic of writing? And you have to be very intuitive to have that happen. Like your writing's almost an intuitive process to have that happen.
It is. I am very much, I write so I can read what happens next. I have the mystery. I'll do the skeleton of the book is the mystery. The who done it, what done it, how done it. But everything in between, I read because I want to know. I have major events in books, but sometimes I'm completely blindsided. I have the character of Edward, who is U.S. Marshal Ted Forster at this point, but Edward is his name because he's also like Batman and Bruce Wayne. He is the assassin that was bored with humans, so he started killing monsters only, and that's his alter ego. But now he is actually ended up dating someone seriously and planning a wedding, and now he has a family. I did not see that coming. A paragraph before I met the woman he was dating is when I knew he was dating somebody. And so both Anita and I were going, what? Where did this come from? He also chose to live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which I've never been to. I have never stepped foot in Albuquerque, New Mexico until I went for the research trip. And as soon as I stepped off the plane and saw those black mountains around Albuquerque, I went, you really do live here. How can you live someplace I've never been? That again, it is magic. I can't explain that. He is one of those characters. Some characters come out so strong, have such opinions, and I just follow around sometimes is how it feels. Others, they're created for a purpose. I call them Frankenstein characters because you sew them together trying to figure out what you want them to do. And I find sometimes those characters don't work for me because if I come with too big an agenda, especially early in the series, I would do that more. As I've gone on, I know that I can't force a character.
Right.
And the harder I try to force them, the more they're going to fight me. So more and more it is intuitive. I just go, here's what I'm wanting to do. Who wants to come play? So I have to get out of their way. I just write them. I'm not living their lives. I'm not dating these people. I'm not trying to solve these crimes in real life. In Anita's world, vampires and other monsters are too dangerous to put in jail. So if they break too much of the law, there's not going to be a trial for murder. They're just going to be executed, legal execution. So really, Anita is not a cop. Most of the time, she knows who the bad guy is. She's trying to save lives before they kill more people. And so I finally ended up talking to combat veterans because that is the level of violence that she does on some cases.
Well, having that, arc probably is really allowing Anita to grow over time. I mean, you don't have a character that's static once you know a lot about that and how it impacts people over time.
And had they not been generous with their real life experience, had I not been able to see it, I wouldn't have had that arc. I wouldn't have gotten that right. It would have been close to two-fisted tales of adventure instead of the emotional toll that it takes. And it's important. Both with Edward and with Anita, I was able to show that.
Let's talk a little bit about your setting. Slay and your Anita Blake series is set in St. Louis, but it's a different sort of St. Louis than I inhabit. Tell us a little bit about the rules of that world, where St. Louis is the setting, and it's set in a real city, and we see that city, those of us who live here, but there's another part to it.
In the first two books, Guilty Pleasures and Laughing Corpse, you can actually follow. I'd use the real road names, and in Guilty Pleasures, there's a big Victorian that has a freak party in it, and it's a real house. I did not anticipate that fans would try to find that house and knock on the door looking for the vampires.
Oh my gosh, where is that house?
It's in St. Charles. There are no vampires in that house. Please do not knock on this house. Please leave the poor people alone. But because I was having fans say that they'd done that, I started getting more vague on where everything was. It'll be in the right area, but you can't knock on the door anymore.
You do kind of have landmarks, though.
I do have landmarks. I got to go to the Fox Theater, which I still think is one of the most beautiful theaters I've been to. I get to show off some of St. Louis because I love St. Louis. It has that small town feel, and yet within a very short space you have the big city feel. And it has a good mix that most cities don't. And so if I want to go out into the country and have the bodies out there, I can, within 30 to 40 minutes, I have an isolated area. If I need to go into the city and have one area like that, again, whatever I need. One of the biggest differences, other than the fact that there are real vampires and everybody knows it, that's one of the big differences in my series, and is that if you see a zombie shambling up your street, you can call the police. They don't think you're crazy. They send an extermination team with flamethrowers to take care of it, unless they can figure out where the zombie goes to, and then they'll try to put it back in its grave. Jean-Claude came down to one of the areas when I was first researching, had warehouses, but it was mostly abandoned warehouses. Well, he put the Circus of the Damned in one of the warehouses, which is a permanent circus, permanent midway, like one of those traveling fairs, but it doesn't travel. And it brought economic success. So in Anita's world, that whole section became businesses. We also have thriving businesses down on the riverfront with vampire. We have Guilty Pleasures, which is vampires and shapeshifters they are the entertainment on stage, and the shapeshifters take off a lot more than just their clothes. They actually shape change on stage. And you have now a bridal boutique that is now run by vampires. You have businesses where so many people wish they were real, wish that they were businesses they could go
I imagine
to.
readers look and go, I wonder if that's the setting of that, if that's the building. You can imagine it might be.
Early in the series, I had a cave, underwater cave. I went spelunking and everything, but I moved the cave system. I moved it in a place where there are no caves, and it's hard to find a place in St. Louis area with no caves.
I bet it is, in Missouri. Yeah.
But I moved it just in case, because it was very dangerous, had an underwater section, and cave diving is one of the most dangerous things you can do. And I moved it, and I thought maybe I'm being over careful, but first sighting I had for Circus of the Damned, a couple came up and said, we looked for the cave, and it wasn't where you said it would be. And I said, no, it wasn't. I said, what were you going to do if you found the cave? What were you going to try to duplicate? What happened in the book? I said, she almost dies in the cave, almost drowns. She says, yes. I said, you would not have me to write your way out. I wouldn't be able to give you a happy ending. And they kind of looked at me. I said, that's why I moved the cave. That's why the cave isn't where you can find it. Yeah. And they went, oh, okay. That's why I move things.
In this book, in Slay, Anita Blake's family meets Jean-Claude because they are supposed to be getting married.
Yes.
Was that fun to write, this sort of collision of the two worlds?
It was very fun to see a regular Midwestern dad get to question his future son-in-law, who happens to be over 600 years old and a vampire. And yet you get the same questions, have you ever been married? And we get to find out Jean-Claude's background, that he has been married once, and that she died and they had a child which also passed. And it was very interesting having the same questions, but getting to tell historical answers. And the fact that Jean-Claude was nervous about meeting her father. I loved that. It was endearing. And the fact that he is suave and debonair, but in this instance, he's just like everybody else. He's meeting the parents.
So what would you call your genre if you had to give it a name?
I've started using the term paranormal thriller.
Okay.
Because the books genuinely are mysteries, but because they have the supernatural in them, they have vampires and shapeshifters, I want people, if they're picking up and think it's going to be a regular mystery with no supernatural, I want them to know. There is romance, there is, as I call it, spice, but it is in the context of the magic system or just the ongoing relationships. If you're a romance reader and you want the romance, but you're not wanting horror, I want you to know. I want you to be prepared. I get to play with all genres at the same time, and I don't have to pick and choose, which is one of the reasons I think that this is the 30th book, and I still am, and I'm writing the next one and have no plans to stop, and the readers are still loving it.
Can you tell us anything about the next one?
I think if we don't have the wedding soon, that there will be a revolt among the readers. So I have to do that, and I have to say I'm intimidated at this point. How do you pull off I've researched royal weddings, of all things, and the price tag was staggering. I would rather skip the wedding again because I'm intimidated to try to live up to this, but I know what the murder mystery is. I know what monster. I know what done it. I know how done it. I'm now trying to decide how many characters to bring on stage to try to keep things a little bit more manageable. Because if we're close to the wedding, then a lot of out-of-town people would come in for it. But if we have too many characters, then the book just gets too big.
Yeah, and you can't be deep into any of them.
And I would rather do depth of a slightly smaller cast than skim over.
Right.
So I have to decide who's in town, who's getting fitted. And I also have to be careful, since I know that it's going to be a quite scary monster, something really kind of horrendous. I don't want to traumatize certain people. I have my list of people that I don't want to traumatize them anymore. And so I don't want them on stage.
Well, it's going to be fun to write those details, I would imagine, for the wedding, once you kind of sort it out.
No.
No?
No, I'm not a wedding person. I'm not a wedding person. I've had 2 big weddings, but I am not the audience for the wedding. I am now officially intimidated to try to live up to expectations. And Jean-Claude is now king. He's the first king of all the vampires of America. So you really do have that royal thing.
You will also write another series.
Yes.
Or 2. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about those?
The Meredith Gentry series, Mary Gentry, she is a fairy princess, literally the first fairy princess, the only one born on American soil when the series first opens with A Kiss of Shadows. And we have the Fae were kicked out of Europe after the last great human-Fae war, and President Jefferson, accepted them in, and they actually live in their hidden hills are Cahokia Mounds.
Oh, interesting.
And visiting the Cahokia Mounds, standing in that one avenue, I had visited Washington, D.C. not long before, and they are eerily alike.
Yes, they are.
It was very, very poignant, very inspirational. And so she starts off in L.A. Because she's hiding from her family in assassination attempts. She's a private detective out there. But then, of course, her family catches her, and they want her to come home.
That series must really satisfy your interest in history and your desire to kind of delve into that.
Because it was a race for the throne and who could give an heir to the throne, I didn't get to do as much history. I am hoping to, with the next book, I'm hoping that will close that kind of getting everything safe and fixing what was broken, punishing the bad guys, having the good guys totally win, having our happy ever after, and then the next thing I do in the series, I'll be able to explore more of the history, and because we have characters that have lived through it, and I would like to do some of the historical stuff on stage instead of just referencing it. And then there are 9 books in that, and there will be a 10th book. My 3rd series, which only has 1 book. The first book is A Terrible Fall of Angels with Detective Zaniel Havelock, and it is set in the City of Angels in Los Angeles. I don't think that series is going to get to St. Louis, but you never know. I keep bringing everything home. But he was an angel speaker. Literally, he can speak to the higher order of angels, and he was disillusioned. He had a great tragedy happen there. He was the 6'3" young man who had no computer skills, never been in the modern world. And so he passed a recruiter's office, and it was a military recruiter. He joined the Army. And after he got out of the Army, he became a police officer. He is with the supernatural unit there, the Heaven and Hell Squad. They deal with demonic activity and angelic activity, but also anything else that goes under supernatural, that's who you call.
Tell us a little about your writing process.
I am one of those people that doesn't outline. If I outline too much, it takes the impetus I need to write. So I sit down. I try to sit down about the same time each morning. Sometimes I'm more successful than others. And I don't write for a certain amount of time. I write for a certain amount of pages. 4 pages is minimum, and anything over that, I will sometimes write. It will take me 4 hours, and I'll do 2 pages, 4 pages. Sometimes those 4 hours I'll do 20. It just depends on how inspired I am, how into the flow state I am, and I can't predict it. If I'm in flow state, the most I've ever written in one fell swoop was over 50 pages.
Wow.
And I've done that a couple of times. But
what was the time span of that?
16 hours at my desk. but it was 15 pages I got to keep.
Sure.
It isn't all I wrote in that time. It was literally 50 pages of keeper.
Wow.
But then I'll have 16 hours and it's the next day and it's just throwaway. I got to keep 8 pages or 20 pages. So I set myself down in a chair and I say, you're going to write and you have to write this many pages before you can get up. Or, I get to the bottom of page 2, I can go make tea. I literally say, if you get to this paragraph and finish the scene, you can go, do some yoga stretches. If I'm inspired, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. If I'm inspired, I don't know what's happening around me and I don't care. But if I'm not, then literally some days I will write down and go, okay, why do you not want to write today? I literally will sit there and tell myself, it's too hot, it's too cold, the neighbor's using a chainsaw on something, and then I find that within half a page, 2 pages of complaining, that the muse looks over my shoulder and goes, we can do better. But the muse has to find me at my desk. It has to find me working. It has to find me trying. Now, I have to say that online has gotten more tempting because now we're encouraged. I mean, I'm with traditional publishing and I'm still encouraged to do things online. And once you get online, you get that dopamine hit, that happy brain chemicals. It's much more easy to get that than writing. So I literally now am writing longhand, which I haven't done in years. I'm doing more longhand if I can't behave myself. If I can't pretend I can't get online when I'm writing on a computer, I've started going to longhand sometimes, just so I'll get enough, and then I take it and I will type in what I've written longhand, and I find that helps me stay offline. Online, I think, is the great procrastinator. Mm-hmm. And
for many of us.
So stay offline. If you're not inspired, it doesn't matter. Set your butt in a chair, type until something comes to you, and don't throw anything away after the end of a bad day, because maybe it's the inside of your head that's bad and not the pages.
Great advice.
Hard learned.
Well, Laurell K. Hamilton, it's been great to talk to you today. So happy you're so prolific and continuing on.
Oh, thank you. And it's been wonderful here to just talk to you. And I am doing what I wanted to do since I was 14. And I feel very lucky that I grew up to be able to do that, because most of us don't get to do that.